Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast brought to you by Seat Tires. I'm your host for this Sunday IPL episode, Ashwin, and I'm joined by Varun in Singapore. DJ is out, I think, on a beautiful Sunday afternoon playing cricket, which is a little disappointing because the Delhi Capitals are playing as we record this. So he's made his priority calls, but that's fine. We live with it. Varun, another few exciting days. So we recorded last Wednesday, which means we have 5 games to cover. But let me just start by saying at the points table, none of us, again, would have really predicted not just CSK being right up top, but having a net run rate gap so big that it basically seems insurmountable at this point, right? What is going on with CSK?
I think last year was just like an odd year for them. CSK has always been in the playoffs. They've always been in the finals. And yeah, they won in 2018. 2019, they made the finals. Last year was just the aberration. So I think they regrouped. It had been only 6 months. CSK probably turned that to their advantage. Dhoni is there. Dhoni actually we'll talk about it later, but he's not needed for his batting or he's not needed for his batting at all. He's just needed for his mastermind, and he's a great wicket keeper. So overall, it's working for them. They bat deep. Everyone keeps going from the first ball.
I mean, Dhoni is a full-time wicketkeeper in this squad, no question, right? But
yeah,
so let's talk about this because we're exactly at the halfway stage, right? There's a game going on right now. By the time people listen, more would have happened. But at this point, every single team has played 7 games. I can't remember a year where the top 3, let's call it top 4 almost, and the bottom 2 or 3 were so divided, right? What's made the IPL so exciting is just how close the kind of spots 2 through 6, 7 are. There's usually one team that's fallen off, but Punjab, KKR, and Hyderabad, at least at the time of recording this, look like they're way worse than, let's say, Delhi, CSK, and Bangalore with Mumbai, right? Or is it just me?
no, the gulf is huge, and so in other IPLs that we've seen in the past, if it's 56 games, you're seeing that up to the 48th, 50th game, maybe only 1 or 2 teams are guaranteed. Everyone's fighting for that last 2 spots, so much so that it goes to the last game and net run rate. In this IPL, we're seeing it very different. I mean, there's 2 or 3 teams that have just broken away. A couple of results were very interesting this week, which makes the table good in some sense for a fan. But otherwise, the top 2 or 3 are just breaking away from the rest. And it'll be very interesting for me to see what's the narrative now this year on the IPL, because otherwise it's about this tournament that goes on till the end. Now, if you've got top 4 settled by 3/4 of the way in, it'll be interesting to see what viewership is like.
Yeah, really well said. We're going to need to be tracking that closely, but we have 5 games to cover. So let's jump right into it. Since we were last with you on Wednesday in the midweek episode, if you haven't caught that, DJ and I recorded that. Go back and look. Let's have a listen. But the first match that happened on Thursday, which I believe was a doubleheader day, which is again strange to me because I didn't make changes for my fantasy team on this this Thursday morning game because I'm not used to doubleheaders on weekdays. So that's my excuse for not doing well, even though I think I'm still beating the 2 of you guys.
I think just remember it's being held on Super Sundays and Thunder Thursdays.
But wasn't there one on Wednesday?
Yeah, that was Wow Wednesdays the last week.
Oh, you're right. It is actually Sundays. No, there's one on Friday at the end of May. There's no logic to this. So I refuse to accept that it's my
Fantastic fault. Fridays, Thunder Thursdays, Super Sundays.
What about Wow Wednesdays? Wild Wednesdays? What did you say?
Wild Wednesdays. Spectacular Saturdays.
Come up with Tuesdays.
Mundane Mondays.
Why mundane if it's doubleheader?
Because there'll never be a doubleheader on a Monday. Anyway, we've digressed.
Okay, we've lost enough time to talk about this first match, but there's not a lot to say, honestly, about Mumbai Rajasthan. Rajasthan came out to bat, made 171, which is interesting. I'm of the firm belief that 171 for 4 is not good enough as a scoreline, especially when you're, call it 90 odd in the 10th over. And I'll tell you, like, as a rule of thumb for us, you got to double after 12, 13 overs, unless you've lost a lot of wickets. So this one was a little disappointing for me, where everybody batted okay, right? Butler, Jaiswal, Samson, Dubey all crossed 30, but nobody was able to go on, and yet they didn't leave enough time for a Morris or Tewatia to come in and hit 6s. So they made 171. Mumbai pretty much chased it down with an over and a half to spare, pretty routine. Varun, I just want to ask you about Quinton de Kock, right? He blew a little bit hot and cold early on, but again, Mumbai and teams like Mumbai and Chennai back their players. They haven't dropped a guy like Quinton de Kock. Comes out and makes 70. I think in all of Mumbai's wins so far, if I'm not mistaken, a different player has won man of the match. So how important is a lefty wicketkeeper at the top of the order for Mumbai? And is this the sign of him coming good, which means we should all be worried now?
I mean, there's only two lefty wicket keepers in Mumbai, and both are very good. So it, I don't know, man. I think you talk about CSK backing their players. I think Quinton de Kock is such a class player that there shouldn't even be too much talk about Mumbai is backing him and he should be dropped. Realistically, the alternatives are Kishan or Chris Lynn. Chris Lynn to me is not a good enough uh, replacement for Quinton de Kock. And Kishan has been given a particular role. And so I do have to mention that in this game, I think the biggest factor for me that I was taken by surprise is that Mumbai Indians dropped Kishan, somebody who has performed so well for them, hasn't done that much wrong. Sure, he hasn't got off to the best IPL, but neither has Surya Kumar Yadav, to be honest. But they've actually opted to go with another bowler. And so Nathan Coulter-Nile actually replaced Kishan. In some sense, of course, there were other changes to make sure that the overseas quota was met, but that was a shocking decision for me.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think a lot of these sides go through these balances, but Mumbai have come off of 2 losses and then turned this around with the win and got another. So obviously the decision to go one, let's call it batsman light, because you can rely on Pandya, Pollard, and the other Pandya in the middle order seems to be working for Mumbai. So honestly, not a lot else to say about this game. I'd love for you to give me the rundown on the next match of that doubleheader, Thunder Thursday, or whatever you called it, which was Delhi versus KKR, which I know are one of your really favorite teams and one of your, like, let's call it least favorite teams. But
The
it ended up
least
pretty good.
favorite team.
The least favorite. Tell
The
us what
least favorite
happened.
team. No, so yeah, so this is a game where I've got a lot of friends from KKR, and we have a lot of friendly banter that turns very heated after a while. But essentially, KKR looks great on paper, right? We can't doubt that. It's just that they've not been able to get off to a great start. But what KKR doesn't seem to be doing is they don't seem to be going to the meeting room or the round table and discussing and seeing what needs to change. And so they just came out and played the exact same template of cricket that they have been playing, and nothing is going to change. So you had Rana, Shubman Gill all striking at below 120, and Tripathi. Morgan got out for duck, Narayan out for duck. And you'd reached a stage where suddenly they were 82 for 5, 109 for 6, and I think that the game was lost in that aspect, in that regard, straight away. Now I do have a special mention for Andre Russell, who I think on his birthday or just on the day or one day before, he came out and hit 45 of 27, which was a great effort given the context of the team. But to hit 154 in 20 overs on a wicket that should have been at least a 175, I think it was a pretty poor performance all round. And can't help but think that KKR just keeps leaving it towards the end. There, the other thing I've learned this IPL, and it seems fairly obvious what I'm going to say, but batsmen need a little bit of time to settle in. Unless you're AB de Villiers or Russell, you actually don't need time, and you're such a great player. But it's not going to work, man. So essentially, they got to 154 for 6. Again, the thing is they're facing Delhi, and as a Delhi Capitals fan, you always know that while we've done well in the last 2 to 3 years, you can never put a performance past Delhi where they could get bundled out for 80 or 70. But boy, what a start it was. Prithvi Shaw came out in the first over to Shivam Mavi. The first ball was a wide, the next ball was a 4. And at that point, the score was 5 for 0 of zero point 0.1 balls. And I started getting feels of Virender Sehwag. And then this guy just surpassed Virender Sehwag because the score at the end of that first over was 25 for 0 in 1 over. And he hit 6 fours. The only other guy who's done that is his Delhi teammate, Ajinkya Rahane, back in 2012. So it doesn't happen very often. 6 fours in the over. And if I can be honest, I think the game was just taken away at that stage. Even the KKR friends of mine, the fans, everyone was like at the end of first over, like, this is done. There's no fighting back in this. The total we've put up is not big enough. And Dhawan supported him beautifully. Prithvi Shaw got 82 of 41, strike rate of 200. Pant came in, hit a couple of sixes, and nothing more to talk about. It was a very convincing win, and I would say it was almost like a thrashing in some sense.
Yeah, at one point we were all so close to feeling like we're going to get that 10-wicket win. And then Pat Cummins, of course, picks up 3 wickets suddenly out of nowhere. So it became a 7-wicket win, which we're pretty happy with. The one thing I do want to say, which I think is interesting, is Shikhar Dhawan just molded his game beautifully, right? And I loved his words in the press conference where after he said, Shaw was striking at 200. He was just hitting the ball everywhere. I realized I can play the anchor role for this game and kind of go back into my old mold of playing. And if this guy can mold himself to batting faster when he needs to, slowing down to adjust and accommodate for Shaw when he needs to, that is incredible versatility. So I was really glad to see that. Go ahead.
And they asked him that if you were younger, would you have tried to compete with Shaw and go a little faster? And he said, yeah, if I was 10 years or like if it was 10 years earlier, I think I would have tried to speed up. But I'm 10 years older and wiser. And so I knew the role I had to play. The point is to win the game for the team.
Just incredible maturity. I think really, really well said. So another nice little win for Delhi, especially against KKR. So nice that you were able to celebrate that one as well at Ahmedabad. And then we came into Friday. Now this was a fascinating match, Punjab versus Bangalore. Arguably a lot of people say the Punjab team is basically a Karnataka team in some ways with Rahul and Mayank and these guys and Kumble coaching and all of that stuff. But Punjab versus Bangalore is always a fun game. And this is the match actually where we had a couple of interesting things we want to talk about. So, Varun, let me quickly run down, right? First off, let me say and acknowledge we've just learned that KL Rahul missed out on today's Punjab game because of an acute appendicitis infection. So he's been admitted to the hospital. He's missing out at least for the next few games, presumably the rest of the IPL. So we wish him a speedy recovery. In this game against Bangalore, though, he looked phenomenal, right? Like after all the criticism of batting too slow, strike rates of 110, 120, and all that stuff, he comes out, makes 91 off 57 balls. Similar template, started slow, but just ability to accelerate at the end. He showed us what this guy's made of. Gale played pretty well too. They made 179, a few weak performances from the other batsmen. But they made one change. Yeah. Do you want to add something on the batting?
Yeah, I wanted to just say I was out for dinner during this innings, and it was such a weird innings because every time I looked at my phone, the score was either ticking like 6-4, 6-4, or it was not moving for like 5 minutes in a row. And so I was like thinking something is wrong with my app. The Cricket Buzz app is not refreshing fast enough. But later, like you said, only 3 players got double digits. They got there very fast. Everyone else got single digits, but somehow they still managed to get to a run rate of 9 and over.
Yeah, exactly as you said. It was very up and down the whole innings. They ended up at 179. I want to highlight that at the end, this little flourish came from this new guy they brought in. So interestingly, Arshdeep Singh, who had a really good start to the tournament, got left out, and Harpreet Brar came in. Lefty, tall, off spinner. But he came in bat late in the innings and made 25 off 17. So you're thinking, okay, this guy's made a pretty good impact in his early on in his match. And then RCB came out to bat, right? They come out, I think after around about the 9 over mark, they're sitting pretty. Sorry, anything to add?
And I just want to say, look, everyone who's watching the IPL knows that there's a CAT strategic timeout that is taken. Obviously, we are partnering with CAT. And so what we want to do is we want to try and at least every episode talk about one strategic timeout and how that shaped the game. We're happy to do more than one. We would like all of you listeners to write in and tell us if you think there's a particular strategic timeout that you felt that a coach and a captain were discussing something that could have changed the game. Let us know. For this week, I'm going to call out the strategic timeout that the Punjab Kings took against the Royal Challenge Bangalore. At the end of the 9th over, RCB was around 60 for 1 with Virat Kohli still there cruising. They had bowled majority of pacers. Harpreet Brar, who Ashwin spoke about, had just bowled 1 over so far. He had gone for 9 runs in that over, including 2 leg byes. But typically a young new cricketer goes for 9 runs, you don't bowl him again very quickly, right? After the strategic timeout, KL Rahul comes out, gives Brar the ball, and man, after that, it was just like this turnaround. So I think, Ashwin, for the first time, we've got a situation where the CAT strategic timeout really worked brilliantly. And Harpreet Brar is our puncture-resistant player of the week because apart from getting hit in that first over, he came back. And on the first ball after the strategic timeout, he'd got Virat Kohli. A few balls later, he got Glenn Maxwell.
The second ball,
actually. So he was on a hat trick because he got Glenn Maxwell to beauty, where he got bowled, and there were all sorts of memes going out. And Wasim Jafar also said Preeti Zinta was saying thank you to Maxwell against his old team.
But Maxwell,
And
this was interesting. Maxwell just stood there because he was in pure like, did he want to
yeah,
review a bowl
yeah,
decision? It's happened before with Kohli,
yeah,
but he wanted to. It almost like he wanted to send it for a referral for a bowl decision. It's like, what are you going to
yeah.
check for? It was
Yeah,
bowl.
and so this young kid then comes out. He gets 2 wickets and 2 balls. He's on a hat trick, and I think 5 balls later he gets AB de Villiers. So, I mean, for all of those guys who are playing fantasy, if you want to use your booster, you pretty much do it on a day where Kohli, Maxwell, and de Villiers are playing, right? And this guy just cleaned up everyone's hope of getting any fantasy points that game.
I mean, phenomenal, right? No question about Harpreet's impact on the game. Punjab ended up winning against Bangalore, who was looking so good. And of course, now have lost 2 of their last 3 games, including beating Delhi by 1 run, which we've talked about. So Bangalore's starting to look a little bit shaky, but full credit to Harpreet Brar. Just an absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Kohli, Maxwell, and AB in your first game for the Kings 11 Punjab. Excuse me, Punjab
Yeah.
Kings. I said it wrong. But just
And you're right,
phenomenal.
RCB need to watch out just a little bit because Chahal is not bowling very well. And Harshal Patel, who started off the series phenomenally and is still the purple cap holder, so 100% credit to him, has now gone for 37 runs in his last over of the previous game and 20 plus runs in this game versus Punjab Kings. So he gave 53 runs for no wickets at 4 overs.
Yeah, back-to-back games of 50 plus
Yeah.
runs.
So that is the only thing where, where RCB's biggest weakness has been their death bowling. Suddenly, if Harshal Patel was the answer and now it's going back the other way, somebody needs to talk to him, give him that self-belief, the confidence, because if he doesn't click, RCB is going to have a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely well said. So that brings us to the end of the third game. Pretty interesting, right? You've seen now in this far in the week, Mumbai starting to look stronger, Delhi continuing to look pretty strong, and then Punjab kind of picking up a win against a team that has looked strong so far. We're going to come back after this short CSK strategic timeout and talk about the last 2 games of the week, and we will see you shortly after this break. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Seat Tires. All right, Varun, we talked about a lot. This next game was probably the highlight of the tournament so far, right? How often have we seen games like this? How often do you see a game where a team makes 218 and gets the opposition, I'm getting ahead of myself, but gets the opposition to 81 for 3 at the halfway mark, and you're thinking, all right, this game's pretty done and dusted. I wasn't even fully watching it. I was fortunate. The weather was great here. I was out playing some golf. I had my phone out mounted watching it, thinking, okay, yeah, this game's pretty done. I don't need to pay attention. And somehow this champion mindset, I mean, basically Pollard does this once a season, right? So I'm getting ahead of it. I'm going to ask you to run down the game, but Pollard freaking does this once a season, right? Where from a losing position, he'll do it. Now he's cemented his spot in the side for the next 6 games at least. But this is a phenomenal game, but also a pretty typical storyline, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic because I have to say that the games in Chennai was starting to get a little bit boring. Now, nothing against the bowlers, they did really well, but as fans of the IPL, we want to see games where 220 is being chased down quite regularly. I mean, that's what makes this exciting. So, Chennai Super Kings put it to bat 218 for 4. Faf again 50, beautiful at 180. Moeen Ali, he's the standout performer for me. He's just clicking game after game, and I think it'll be very interesting to see if Morgan actually changes his approach to T20 cricket for England by bringing Moeen Ali into the setup. I mean, I think he deserves a look in. And then special mention for our 3D player of the week, Ambati Raidu. 72 of 27 balls. I can't remember the last time somebody has actually hit runs that quickly. Strike rate of 266. Got them across the line. I mean, Jadeja was playing the support character in this particular knock. 218 for 4. It was really interesting because in one of these select dugout conversations in the innings break, Brett Lee said, I think they're 20 runs short. And everyone was laughing.
I missed that. My goodness.
Yeah. And everyone was laughing and everyone was, like, they're crazy. This is Chennai's game all the way. And so like you said, Mumbai Indians came
Can
out.
I say an interesting stat that I saw? This match had in one T20 had 2 century partnerships.
Yeah.
Right? Faf and Moeen made 108 run partnership, excuse me. And then Rayudu and Jadeja had a 102 run partnership. I mean, how incredible,
Yeah.
right? Like, where did you, I can't, maybe the first time it's happened in the IPL. Like, I don't have that in front of me, but two separate century partnerships. Just phenomenal batting from Chennai.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great, man. And that's what we were talking about with Chennai. Dhoni and Sam Curran and Thakur didn't even bat. And so that's the beautiful thing about this team is I think each of them has been given that instruction that just go and swing it, get the runs as quickly as you can because there is enough batting to come. So fantastic performance. And then Mumbai Indians come out, Decock and Rohit looking good, both going at about 130, 140, but not looking great. Some edges, some mishits, some balls were flying to the boundary. We have to also give the disclaimer that the ground is very small. This is at the Kotla. So a lot of mishits do fly for 4 and 6. They both got out. Sky comes in. Sky gets out very early, extremely disappointing. Krunal Pandya walks out at 4, and then suddenly Kyron Pollard comes out and supports him. Now, that's when the game changed because in the middle overs, Pollard was just donking sixes for fun. I think there was one Jadeja over where he hit him for 3 sixes in 1 over. And you don't typically do that with Jadeja, right? So Kyron Pollard got going. Krunal Pandya supported him. Hardik Pandya supported him. But single-handedly, Pollard he got them over the line. So Ashwin, I have to ask you, is he our unanimous CAT Secure Drive Player of the Week?
I mean, no question about it, right? We could have, yeah, no question about it. I don't think anybody will debate that with you. 87 off 34 gets them over the line. I want to ask you a question. We talk about, so yes, 100% Kyron Pollard, CAT Secure Drive Player of the Week. But I want to ask you a question. In the first innings, Bumrah went for 56. I don't remember the last time I saw Bumrah get hit so much. Dhaval went for 48 with no wickets. Both picked up one for 42. Everybody was getting hit. Kyron Pollard got 2 overs,
Yeah.
picked up Faf, and picked up Raina for just 2 runs. So he pulled 2 overs, 2 for 12. Should we have known this is this guy's day? I mean, he came in, he picked up 2 great 2 for 12 in a match where Bumrah goes for 1 for 56 in his 4 over. Like so cricket is a momentum game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like the way Jadeja had his day a few matches ago, a week ago or so. Today, this was Pollard's game, and it's a one-man show, man. He stopped the two batsmen from getting big scores. Even though Chennai got 218, it's possible they could have got even more. And then he comes out with the bat and does this. I mean, just absolute demolition, destruction, and I think he single-handedly won them that game.
Yeah, phenomenal, right? Just again, like I said, one of the highlights of this year's tournament so far to see CSK make 218, Mumbai chase it down. I personally don't love the phrase El Clasico that they stole from Real Madrid versus Barcelona for these two teams. We could come up with a better name, but these are two of the giants of the IPL, right? Let's be honest. And so phenomenal to see. Sad that Chennai came up short, but still sitting pretty at the top of the table. And Mumbai has now started their resurgence, right? Where they started really. Anybody who's watched any IPL knew that when Mumbai started pretty weak, like they had 3. What did they have? They had 3 losses in their first 5. You knew better. We know better that Mumbai's too good a side. Rohit's too good a captain. Too much depth. We knew they were going to come back, and boy, did they come back with a vengeance. So full credit to Kyron Pollard and the Mumbai Indians. And that brings us to our last match of this episode that we're going to cover, which was Super Sunday. Was it Super Sunday, or did you have a better word for it? I think it was Super Sunday.
Spectacular Saturday and Super Sundays.
Spectacular. Oh no, Super Sunday. Let's call it Spectacular Sunday, just to be difficult. The first match of the doubleheader, right? Rajasthan played the Sunrisers Hyderabad. I want to talk to you about the big news of the week that we didn't address up front. That was a statement issued on Spectacular Saturday. Is it still spectacular if there's no doubleheader on it? Anyway, the statement issued on Saturday by the Sunrisers, which was that Warner is being stripped by the Spectacular Sunrisers, that David Warner is being stripped of his captaincy. And obviously, by implication, they said David Warner, they're going to rotate the overseas players. We now know that he didn't end up making the 11. Warren, let me ask you about that, right? He's been at the helm for a long time. He's been a phenomenal contributor. He missed out on 1 year of captaincy, obviously, because of the Sandpaper Gate ban and all of that stuff. Was this the right call? That's a big decision to strip David Warner. Like anytime you change captain mid-season, DK did it last season where he handed off to Morgan. And was this the right call?
It's not a good decision to change your captain mid-season. I personally feel it's a it's a tough situation. In fact, even when DK did it, I think he realized that there's a champion captain in the side, a World Cup winning captain in the side, and so you got to give him the credit. And DK gave it happily and continued to play. In this case, I am a bit puzzled as to what has happened because remember, Warner made that comment to say it was harsh of the selectors to leave out Manish Pandey in the last SRH game. And like, who the hell are these selectors? Like, if Warner doesn't have a say, then who is who's calling the shots in this? Is it VVS? Is it Murli? Is it Tom Moody? Who is calling the shots? So I think there's an element of, maybe Warner wasn't really in charge. I think there's an element of Williamson. Is he a better captain? Because Warner's not really captain. But I think that's kind of BS in my opinion. And then it comes to the third point, which I think is possible, which is that Warner, it happens to players sometimes. Warner is just not striking the ball like he was or like he should. So I think there's an element where he himself might have said that, I'm okay to take a rest for a couple of games. I don't know. There's too much speculation in this. I think it's harsh. I think I've never seen a team where David Warner wouldn't be the first overseas player on the team sheet. So it's going to be a tough call. All I can say is that I hope he takes a couple of days break and he comes back in.
And then let me just ask you, I couldn't agree more. You said it really well. It's a tough call, but the overseas like for like swap they basically made was to bring in Mohammad Nabi.
Yeah, now
Is
that to me was very odd because I was going into debates with my friends about I thought they would bring in Roy. My gut feel told me they'll bring Jason Roy, and a lot of my friends said Jason Holder will come in. Either way, there would have been a Jason, but that would have been pretty good. But then they've rocked up with this Nabi, and even after they selected Nabi, I said, okay, the problem is the power play. You're going to send Samad up the order with Besto to go hitting, and then you send Manish Pandey up the order. So who is the think tank behind this team, and why is it so confusing? Why don't you have the clarity of thought? If you're going to play Nabi, you should have played Holder to give you that experience with the bowling. And as you talk about the game that just happened, I can guarantee you they missed Holder in this game.
Yeah, I mean that's a good segue to talk about the game really quickly. But Rajasthan made 220. So it's unlikely. It's so rare that you chase down 218, 219. It's unlikely that we were going to see it 3 times in 5 days or twice in 3 days, rather. And especially not from a Hyderabad team that looks like they struggled. But Josh Butler, thank you, Josh Butler. He was my fantasy captain this morning, so that helped me for sure. But made 124, just a spectacular innings, and also very well paced. Right, he started pretty slow, started close to just 110, 120 strike rate, and then just picked up and unleashed when he was feeling good. Samson gave him good company, making 48. I mean, they made 220. I want to ask you quickly about the Hyderabad bowling because the Sunrisers arguably have done well over the years and shown up as a strong competitor, largely because of their bowling. And here you have Sandeep Sharma brought back in, went 1 for 50. Khalil not looking good. I mean, you could argue in the past, Khalil, Call, Sandeep, like these are not the biggest names, and yet they've come good for the Sunrisers in the past. What do you think has changed this year, Varun? Is it captaincy? Is it field positioning? Is it decision making? Or is it just that other teams have figured out these kind of happy medium type of bowlers?
I think other teams have figured it out. I mean, look at this 11, man. Like, you've got Vijay Shankar and Kedar Jadhav playing. You got Manish Pandey, who's an India reject on, like, I don't like the guy, but I don't want to be harsh. I know you do. But you got Manish Pandey. Then you've got Abdul Samad, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Sandeep Sharma, Khalil Ahmed. You're just confused. Who do I play? Nobody seems to have the clarity. You've sent Williamson at 3, which is okay, but at the cost of a Warner. You've then got Vijay Shankar and Kedar Jadhav in a game where you need to up the scoring in the middle overs. You should have sent Nabi and Abdul Samad up front. Like, what are you doing? So there's just a big mishmash. I think SRH are extremely confused. Somebody needs to go in and help them just clear their minds. And I don't know, man. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have enough overseas slots to play all their great players, but something's got to change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly have much else to add, right? 220 for 3 given, and then you end up at 165 for 8. Not only is it well short, it's going to hurt your net run rate. Chris Morris picked up 3 wickets. Mustafizur Rahman picked up 3. I got to ask you quickly about him. He looks solid this year, right? After having a tough couple of years,
Yeah.
suddenly he's picked up another 3. He's almost bowling some weird hybrid of left arm quick and left arm off spin. I mean, his cutters are so hard to read, and that just becomes an asset, right? For a team like the Royals.
Yeah, and blessing in disguise, because if Jofra Archer was there, Fizz wouldn't have been playing. So still don't believe there's space for both of them. But sometimes when a player gets injured and you have a quality international bowler already in your side, that's when you realize that they're not missing that much, right? So great from Mustafizur's perspective, great from RR's perspective, but yeah, I think I still believe they're missing Archer.
So safe to say, unless we see a little bit of a miracle, I think the Sunrisers Hyderabad have a lot to come. I mean, 1 win out of 7, 2 points at this point. Very difficult to see line of sight to them. I mean, even if they win all 7 in a row, of course, mathematically they're in, but it's not looking good. KKR probably weren't out of contention for you, or you think they have what it takes to come back, or they're just enough. They'll come back just enough to come 5th. Is that your?
I think they'll do just enough to come 5th.
Okay. And so is it a battle now between, at the halfway stage, CSK Delhi, RCB Mumbai, and then Rajasthan and Punjab potentially fighting for a top 4 spot? Or are those top 4 pretty set for you think?
No, I don't think the top 4 are 100% set. I'll tell you why. I think Delhi and RCB have done well in the last couple of years, but don't forget they have that propensity to collapse. So I think CSK is by far ahead. I think Mumbai Indians, just based on their team and self-belief, is the number 2 team. And I do believe Delhi and RCB are going to be number 3 and 4, but don't put it past either Rajasthan or Punjab to just be able to sneak out one spot.
That's pretty much it, right? 5 games, great to cover. Let me quickly ask you for a prediction, because at the time of recording this, Punjab made 166 versus Delhi. Mayank Agarwal's new skipper made a beautiful 99, my vice captain in fantasy. Thank you very much. We'll do a quick update on fantasy before we wrap up. And Delhi's sitting at 37 for 0 in 4 overs. Do you think we can pull this out?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is our game.
All right. Well, listeners, by the time you listen, you'll know if we were right or wrong. I think this Delhi should be able to do this as well. But thank you, as always, for joining us. Thank you to those of you who are playing fantasy cricket with us. I'm just going to hit refresh really quickly and give you a quick update on our league. So in number 1 spot is a team named Kurma 9 Dream. Always the weirdest team names and hardest to pronounce are the top 3. But sitting in number 1 with 10,800 points, but it's only got 12 transfers left at the halfway mark. So I feel like they're going to drop off. Johnny Blazer is still in top 3. Number 2, Yashaswi06 at number 3, and DJ's favorite team name, Nattu Bhai 11, is at number 4. I have made a nice little surge thanks to Butler and Mayank, so I'm now up to 17. I think this is my first time in the top 20 of the Edges and Sledges fan league. Pretty exciting. Varun, I gotta keep scrolling.
I'm ahead of DJ.
You're at number 76, but you have overtaken DJ, which is exciting. And DJ is just behind you at 85. So I think there's under 100-point delta at the time of recording this. Thank you again to all of you guys who are playing. As always, send in your questions, your comments, feedback, everything. We're on all social media at One Tip One Hand. We're on contact@onetiponehand.com for emails. We'll be back, as always, with a midweek episode this week to talk about the next few games of the IPL. I should be with DJ back there, DJ for that episode. You get to hear plenty of me. This has been the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Seat Tires. Drive safe.